With many fans talking about why they need an Assassin's Creed 1, 2, or 3 remake, they're all forgetting one game that needs it the most. It's an incredibly underrated title, and that's largely due to the circumstances in which it was made. Developed in less than 1 year and forced to release alongside Unity under immense pressure. But since those limitations are no longer a problem, I decided to make a dedicated video explaining why exactly Rogue needs a remake more than almost any other game in the series. And trust me, by the end of this video, you might just forget every other remake idea and start focusing on this one instead. The most plausible reason why many players both love and hate Rogue at the same time is its pacing. The game featured only 6 major sequences, with a corrupted one at the end seemingly added to justify its short length and connect the story to Unity. But as we know, that unfortunately didn't pay off. We got no real mention of Shay or his actions in Unity or any of the games that followed. Ubisoft never gave us a clear reason why, but as I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest reasons was Unity itself. Both games released on the exact same day in the exact same year. That wasn't a coincidence, it was a deliberate decision. At the time, the PS4 and Xbox One had only recently launched, and whenever a new console generation begins, it takes time before the majority of players make the jump. Since Unity was built exclusively for next-gen hardware, Ubisoft wanted old-gen players to have something meaningful to play as well. That's the entire reason Rogue exists. It wasn't part of some long-term plan from the start because it was created as a companion title and, in many ways, a compensation for players who hadn't upgraded yet. That's also why the game looks, feels, and plays so much like Black Flag. It was developed in less than a year and heavily reused existing assets to meet its deadline. Unfortunately, that came at a cost. The story took a massive hit, several missions were cut, and even 2 entire sequences were reportedly removed from the final game, which is exactly why the story feels so rushed, especially when it comes to Shay's transition into the Templar Order. I remember being shocked when they turned him into a Templar within just 2 or 3 sequences. The idea itself wasn't the problem, it was the speed and the pacing because it happened far too quickly for such a major character shift. But now, that doesn't have to be an issue anymore. Black Flag Resynced turned out to be a massive success, and its naval system proved just how well that formula can still work when given the time and resources it deserves. So maybe now is the perfect time to resync Rogue, because if the original game was made in less than a year, imagine what could be achieved with 3 full years of development cycle. Imagine restoring the cut content, expanding Shay's journey, fleshing out the Templar perspective, and introducing new mechanics that simply were not possible back then. Just let the developers cook. Let them make the game they originally wanted to make, without the deadlines, without the compromises, and in its full glory. Maybe then Rogue will finally receive the recognition it deserved from the very beginning. Speaking of the things that got removed from the game or were originally meant to be added, there were a lot of them. In fact, there are so many that an entire dedicated video could be made covering them alone. But for this video specifically, we'll only focus on the major ones. For starters, as I mentioned earlier, a full-fledged narrative arc for Shay that was supposed to span roughly 2 sequences ended up getting cut. The exact details of those missions were never revealed publicly, but fortunately we do have a general idea of what they were intended to include. From most of the information available, those sequences were meant to focus much more on Shay's relationship with the rest of the Brotherhood. Characters like Liam, Hope, Kesagawase, and others were present in the final game, but with additional sequences and missions centered around them. We likely would have gotten a much deeper understanding of their motivations, beliefs, and personalities. More importantly, it could have added greater depth to Shay's eventual betrayal instead of making it feel like an impulsive reaction driven by anger and frustration. Whether those 2 sequences were originally planned for the beginning, middle, or end of the game, or even scattered throughout, they could have drastically changed the overall narrative and how players perceived Shay's journey. But that's not all, because the next idea cut might be the one that completely sells you on a remake. During Rogue's early development, one of the original concepts was for the game to focus entirely on Hayden Kenway. Although that idea was eventually scrapped in favor of Shay, there were still plans for Hayden to play a much larger role in the story. The intention was to showcase more of his ruthlessness, his campaign against the Colonial Brotherhood, and his deeper relationship with Shay, both as a Templar and a mentor. Unfortunately, very little of that made it into the final product. Hayden does appear in the game, but only halfway through, and even then his presence is limited to a handful of story missions, and at times it almost feels as he was added late in development simply to make the stories of Rogue and AC3 feel more connected. And if we consider another major piece of content that was reportedly removed alongside these ideas, things become even more interesting. A completely new city. To this day, fans still debate whether that city was supposed to be Haiti or Quebec. But based on the setting and the game's narrative, I personally believe it was going to be Quebec. Now imagine what a remake could do with all of this. They could seamlessly integrate that missing city into the game without it feeling forced, add one of the cut sequences near the beginning to further develop Shay's relationship with the assassins, then place the second after his transition to the Templar Order to make that shift feel more natural and believable. At the same time, they could expand Hayden's role during those later sequences, giving him the screen time and character development he deserved from the start. Throw in some really meaningful side quests, make Quebec a central location for these additions, and suddenly all three of these cut ideas begin to work together naturally. Not only would this strengthen the narrative, but it would also provide a fantastic opportunity to explore more of colonial America before the Revolutionary War truly began. And perhaps most importantly, it would allow us to dive deeper into Hayden's character while creating much stronger connections to AC3. And if all of that works well, then go one step ahead. Give us a fully fledged Hayden DLC focused on his early years as a Templar. Or perhaps the period when he discovered the truth about Reginald Birch and ultimately decided to kill him for what he had done to Jennifer. Honestly, it wouldn't feel out of place at all. It would expand one of the franchise's most beloved characters, strengthen the connection between multiple AC entries, and finally give Rogue the scope and ambition it always felt it was missing. Now, don't get me wrong, Rogue did try to make us feel like a Templar, but not quite. Most of the time, it felt like we were simply playing an assassin equipped with some high-tech tools and gadgets. And as we've already discussed, that wasn't really the developers' fault. They worked with the time and resources they had available, but now they have the opportunity to make that experience much better. Instead of limiting the Templar fantasy to things like the puckle gun for the Morrigan or Shay's air rifle, they could expand it with a much wider range of gadgets, abilities, and mechanics. After all, we're part of an organization with immense influence and resources. For example, Shay has far stronger ties to the British military now since he's a part of the Templars, so why not build gameplay around that? Imagine something similar to the assassin recruit system, but more refined and more fitting for a Templar. Instead of calling assassins to assist us, we could command redcoats to support us in combat, secure locations, or help during large-scale encounters. It would instantly make the Templar experience feel distinct rather than simply being an assassin experience with a different coat of paint. And it makes perfect sense narratively as well. Shay understands both worlds better than almost anyone. He spent years as an assassin before becoming a Templar, making him the perfect character through which to explore both sides of the conflict. He's a former assassin and a present-day Templar, the best of both worlds. So let us feel that difference not just through dialogue but through gameplay and visuals as well. Make us experience the Templar perspective in ways the original game simply couldn't. And while we're talking about gameplay improvements, parkour is another area that deserves attention. New York is one of the best locations in the game for movement and traversal. It has dense architecture, rooftops, and plenty of opportunities for stylish navigation. Yet somehow there never seemed to be enough moments where the game truly encouraged us to use those spaces. A remake could fix that. Make parkour feel more natural, more fluid, and more rewarding. Bring in the best movement mechanics from the modern Assassin's Creed titles, especially if this hypothetical remake arrives after Hexy. Because historically, Assassin's Creed remakes tend to build upon the technology and gameplay foundations of the most recent titles. So if newer games introduce improvements that fans genuinely love, then the remake should absolutely take advantage of them. And honestly, the same philosophy should apply to naval gameplay as well. The Morrigan is an incredible ship, but it often feels a little too similar to the Jackdaw. To upgrade it, we're once again farming resources, boarding ships, and engaging in progression systems that felt almost like Black Flag. Now I understand that's a major part of naval gameplay, but Black Flag was fundamentally a pirate fantasy, while Rogue wasn't. So why not lead into that distinction? Give us new ways to upgrade the Morrigan and strengthen our naval capabilities. Since the Templars possess wealth, influence, and technological superiority, let us feel that through progression. Instead of scavenging every upgrade ourselves, perhaps our connections to the British Empire could provide us access to advanced equipment, ship enhancements, and experimental technology. Make the Morgan evolve like a vessel backed by a powerful organization rather than a pirate ship built from stolen resources. And while they're at it, Shay's combat could evolve alongside his journey, and he becomes more involved with the Templars, and his fighting style could gradually shift as well. Now I know that's not an easier task, but what if they somehow pulled it off? Imagine Shay beginning the game with techniques and habits that clearly reflect his assassin training, only to slowly adopt more disciplined, aggressive, and calculated methods as he embraces the Templar philosophy. The possibility is there, and when we're talking about a remake, there's no crime in speculating about what could be achieved if the developers were finally given the time, resources, and freedom, which they never originally had. One thing we absolutely had to appreciate about the original Rogue above all else, and my favorite aspect of the game, is how it made us feel like we were truly on the other side of the conflict. For once, we were not the hunters, we were the ones being hunted. Whether it was the stalkers lurking in the shadows or the gang leaders waiting to strike. The enemy AI genuinely felt like it was designed around the idea that assassins were now our enemies. The moment we heard those whispers, we instantly went on guard. And that's exactly what made the mechanics so memorable. It was simple, but it worked. The problem was that it was also one of the few truly unique gameplay features Rogue introduced. Aside from the boarding mechanics and a handful of smaller additions, the stalkers were the main thing that separated the game from Black Flag. But that's where a remake has a huge opportunity. It can expand on that idea without taking away what made it special in the first place. Imagine assassins using techniques and tools from across the franchise. Maybe a hidden assassin suddenly hits us with a sleep dart from a rooftop. Perhaps we're forced into a brief reaction-based encounter where we have to counter their attack in time. And if we succeed, we're rewarded with extra loot, resources, or valuable information. Not because every encounter needs a quick-time event, but because it would make assassins feel unpredictable and dangerous, the way they're supposed to be. The same philosophy could apply to naval gameplay as well. Have assassin control ships actively hunt us, increase the chances of being boarded, and make us defend the Morgan from coordinated attacks at sea. Let us experience what it feels like when the Brotherhood turns its attention towards us and decides that we're the target. Because that is a perspective we have seen rarely in the franchise. And honestly, there are countless ways they could build upon this foundation. Add more assassin encampments throughout the world, create stronger enemy hideouts with unique rewards, and introduce special assassin hunters that track Shay across regions. Give the Brotherhood a more visible presence so that it could genuinely feel like we're dismantling a powerful organization piece by piece. None of these additions would take away from Rogue's identity. If anything, they would strengthen it. They would make the game's central premise, being hunted by assassins, feel deeper, more polished, and far more engaging than it was in the original. Just like how Black Flag Resynced evolved its enemy AI and made encounters more challenging. That's exactly the direction I'd want a Rogue remake to take. Not a one-to-one recreation, an improvement. A version that respects the original while building upon it, making every encounter more intense and every hunt more dangerous. And every victory more satisfying, because that's what a remake should do. Not replace the original, but refine it into the experience it always had the potential to become. I know this video ended up sounding more like a wish list than a traditional remake pitch, but I think you got the point. Assassin's Creed Rogue needs a remake more than almost any other game in the series. Not because it came after Black Flag and not because it shares many of the same mechanics, but because it really deserves one. It's a game filled with great ideas, unique perspectives, and tons of untapped potential that never really got the chance to shine because of the circumstances surrounding its development. Given enough time, resources, and creative freedom, a remake could finally turn Rogue into the game it always felt like it wanted to be. And speaking of that, what would you want to see if a Rogue remake ever happens? Are there any features, story changes, or gameplay improvements you'd like Ubisoft to add? And most importantly, do you think Rogue actually deserves a remake? Let me know in the comments. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and goodbye.